This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 35, looking at Jessica Jones, season 1, episode 5, aka The Sandwich Saved Me. Welcome back, Defenders, to Defenders TV Podcast, episode 35. We're looking at the episode, aka The Sandwich Saved Me. Sandwiches. And this is Jessica Jones on Netflix, and it's season 1, episode 5. I am one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host today, Derek. We're a man down today.
Man down.
Yeah, unfortunately, Chris couldn't join us for this episode, but he will return for episode 6. But we're going to crack on with just the two of us for this one, so Chris will be back, promise. John, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really good. Looking forward to sandwiches, I must say. A hoagie sounded not like a sandwich at all. I presume that's a brand name in America. I'm really not familiar with it, but hoagie sounds like, I don't know, a bogey. Sounds like a hickey.
I have never heard that before.
I don't know.
It's like a long, soft sandwich with loads of fillings in it, kind of like a Subway.
Yeah, it doesn't sound nice, basically.
But you get 2 for 1 if you go to Jessica.
Well, that's true. That is true. And
in fact, actually, if you want to know what a hoagie's like, Jessica's dressed as a hoagie, not a sandwich.
Yeah, no, but it's great because you eat the hoagie and then you do the Gillian Michaels 30-day shred, which, quite frankly, and you know, this is honest to God, I could not believe was here in episode 5 after I had been going on about the 30-day shred briefly, especially with respect to Luke Cage's abs and trying to get them.
Yeah, that's right. So you've been doing the 30-day shred and you find out that that's how Jessica got her powers.
Yeah, well done. I am going to be able to jump buildings after Gillian Michaels' 30-day shred. Quite frankly, I cannot believe it. And just remember, as Gillian Michaels says, being told to just walk is a false message of lethargy.
Wow.
Oh. I must say,
this
I do kind of...
Defenders TV podcast brought to you by Gillian Michaels' 30-day shred.
I do find it hilarious. Part of me, whilst doing the routine, is trying to, keep in the laughter. So, my ab muscles will be great.
Excellent stuff.
But moving on, of course, remember, if you want to provide any feedback, all things feedback regarding Marvel's Jessica Jones, any of the episodes, the season, just anything in general, Gillian Michaels' 30-day shred even, please send them on to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com.
Yeah, and as we're going into releasing an episode a week from now on, this is our 5th episode of the podcast on Jessica Jones. We'll be releasing episodes every Tuesday, so make sure you subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. You can do that easily by just going to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. That'll take you straight through to iTunes. Otherwise, you can subscribe on any Android podcast catcher through pretty much any of the services like Beyond Pod, Podcast Addict, and you can also subscribe through Stitcher as well. Let us know if you're searching on your podcast catcher and can't find us, and we'll make sure that our podcast goes up there and is available for you as well.
Absolutely. And of course, you can interact and join us across Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, just search Defenders TV Podcast to join our group or like our page and get involved there in some of the discussions. Or you can tweet at us at DefendersCast. That's at DefendersCast on Twitter, and it's great to get involved and to chat about this with everyone, especially as well, given that we did have the first Civil War trailer only yesterday, which had, Team Cap and Team Tony.
That's it. Yeah, we had a fantastic trailer, actually. Really, really enjoyed it. I think that's kind of setting up my favorite movie. Felt like a Captain America movie, which, as our regular listeners will know, is pretty much my favorite character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to Cap 3.
Yeah, and I think we'll discuss some of that more on our next podcast when Chris returns. Yeah. Just briefly, we'll have a little news or trailer section for Civil War. It's a big deal, and certainly, it would linked into some of our podcast conversation about, will something from Netflix series such as Daredevil or Jessica Jones impact into the Superhero Registration Act.
Yeah.
And we kind of got a glimpse here that actually it's the Sokovia Accord, which is all to do with the fact that in Age of Ultron, Avengers Age of Ultron, yes, a city was lifted out of the earth. I think that would cause legislation,
Possibly,
quite frankly.
yes, possibly. But I think on that note, I think it's time to get into Jessica Jones. Episode 5, The Sandwich Saved Me, or AKA The Sandwich Saved Me. Fantastic name for an episode. Love it. This episode was written by Dana Barata. This is the first episode of Jessica Jones. I think she does a couple more later on in the series. She is one of the producers of the show. And it was directed by Steven Surgic, who you might remember from our coverage of Daredevil. He directed one of the episodes of Daredevil. He's also directed episodes of Flash. And going back much further in his career, is well known as the director of Wayne's World 2, John.
Wow.
There you go.
Dude.
So, John, do you want to let us know what we got in this episode with your synopsis?
Jessica Jones plays smart over the revelation that Malcolm, the heroin addict down the corridor, is the person providing Kilgrave with the photographs. At the same time, Trish's new friend and bedfellow, Officer Simpson, also becomes involved with them in the hunt for Kilgrave. Despite reservations about Simpson's participation, Jessica accepts his help as she trails Malcolm in an attempt to pin down the exact photo exchange location with Kilgrave. During this operation, Jessica recalls past memories in her life as a regular 9-to-5 employee, a stepsister to Trish, a superhero known as Jewel, and dressed as the sandwich that saved her. However, as events speed up in the hunt for Kilgrave, all of Jessica's superhero strength and intelligence must be utilised as they execute a daring public kidnap of Kilgrave that leads to unforeseen consequences that puts Jessica firmly back in his sights.
So yeah, with this episode, we got our first real fist-to-fist, face-to-face clash with Kilgrave. Yeah, loads going on in this episode. This is pretty heavy with the flashbacks, with the detail about many of the characters in the show. I think really enjoyed it. So listeners, if you're joining us for the first time, the way we cover our episodes is we discuss our 5 points that stood out to us about the episode, and hopefully between the two of us, with our 5 points each, that hopefully will cover everything about the episode, and some little notes as well. And then we decide whether we defend the episode or not. John, do you want to start us off with your first point about this episode?
I do, and it will come as no surprise because I've already talked about it. It is the 30-Day Shred by Gillian Michaels.
I'm telling you, we should go for sponsorship.
I think we should. But, I mean, on a Jessica Jones related note in relation to this point, it's the flashbacks in this episode. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved them. I think you had the whole fun element where they're discussing the dual costume between Jessica and Trish, which I just absolutely loved. I mean, I laughed my head off at some of the stuff. They should call me Camel Toe if I put that on. I mean, like, it was just so funny,
yeah.
Really light and really funny. And like in a series like this, it does deal with really dark things such as psychological manipulation, these themes such as consent of action and what happens to you as a person, in particular a female. I think this is really like good to have these lighter touches.
Definitely. And just for those of you who haven't read the comic books Alias, you may have seen the images before, but that is definitely the costume that Jessica Jones has worn as Jewel. That's the superhero outfit, and the name Jewel as a superhero name was used by Jessica Jones at one time. So I do like that they've called both of these out. I definitely don't think we're going to get it. Looking at that costume, we're not going to get a Daredevil moment where at the end of the series she puts that costume on and calls herself Jewel. Do you think?
No, I mean, she puts this firmly to rest.
Fantastic,
really,
yeah.
She goes, I would need to go trick or treating in this costume. I mean, she really, from what she can see, she's not going to wear that. And I love Trisha's retort against her. You can't wear the hoagie costume and be a superhero. I mean, it's just really good. And then even with Jewel, she goes, that's a stripper's name. That's a slutty stripper's name. I mean, it was just really funny. And I think like the costume comes from the front cover of Pulse. That collected graphic novel where Jessica Jones is working at the Bugle, I think, and there's this whole investigation. I think it links in with Secret Wars as well. So on the front cover of that collected book or graphic novel, you have Jessica Jones flying through the air in actually this costume, this dual costume. So it's absolutely spot on in that. But I love that fun element. And I also love then like that flashback right at the start. I think it gave really great context for her character. I love this whole, this was before Kilgrave, this was after Kilgrave that she went into, straight after the flashback where, it's a surrogate for happy Jessica Jones and not so happy or more serious Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
But I love that flashback again. It had some fun there where they were dealing with the jock who's like trying to be really sort of testosterone about beating a lady at a strength contest.
Oh yeah.
There's the whole thing where she's in the office, and I actually thought that was a newspaper office at first, but I don't think so. So I thought it linked into the Pulse graphic novel as well, but I don't think it did. Looking at it,
yeah, it seemed like more of a financial institution or some kind of basic insurance company or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I love the fact that after she's been fired, she goes, do you want to spend a day drinking down the bar to Trish after she's gotten herself fired, but with a 6-month severance package and all the benefits and a great reference letter. She goes, do I put day drinking down as experience or a special skill?
Right.
So, I mean, that's interesting as well. It's just sort of linking in. But I love how happy she is, how content she is. Mm. And then you have this whole pan back and she's there sort of in her office with Trish. And it's this before Kilgrave and after Kilgrave. It really adds so much context to that character. So I love these flashbacks. And there is another one as well that I want to touch upon, but that's actually a separate point entirely later on that kind of deals with Malcolm as well. So really good use of flashbacks for me in this episode. And I have to say that, finally on this point, when the 30-day shred was mentioned, and Gillian Michaels, I was like, what? Like, I couldn't believe that they mentioned it. I mean, but, we've already had Pilates that have been done, and now Gillian Michaels' 30-day shred. And I have to say now, I did it today in work at lunchtime, and I kind of got a flashback whilst I was doing it. I have to say, it was one that I was going to die and pass out and maybe park a tiger in work, which is not great. It is certainly worthwhile, but definitely I have to say now that was a bit spooky to see that in there. It really was, because we hadn't watched ahead at all. So I mean, this was kind of an interesting meeting of my exercise and my sloth regimes in here, really. But anyway, yeah, flashbacks. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. That is also my first point. I don't think you can avoid it really in this episode, but I took some little extra bits out of it, which I thought was quite interesting. Some of the way that you are introduced to Jessica Jones in the first 4 episodes, you're probably left with the feeling that she is an alcoholic, and she's an alcoholic because of what Kilgrave did to her. You're probably left with the feeling that she doesn't like human beings around her because of Kilgrave. Not really the case. It kind of tells you in the opening scene that she absolutely hates authority figures. She doesn't like anybody else being in control of her, despite the fact that she gets these menial jobs in offices. I work in one myself, so I'm able to say that. But she gets these kind of jobs that she is way above with her experience, with her knowledge, with her abilities, and then she ends off quitting them or getting herself fired or finding out something about the boss, like in this case, so she can claim embezzlement so that she can just walk out of there with some money. It's very interesting that there is still huge segments of her character that were never changed by her experience with Kilgrave. She always seemed to be a bit of an ass when it came to dealing with other people. She just had this attitude that we see pretty quickly early on, that she just didn't like how people treated her, and she wasn't willing to put up with it. Definitely. And that kind of comes through that this was pre-Kilgrave as well.
That whole drinking thing, she liked her drink, and, was she an alcoholic beforehand, or was she pushed just that too far, obviously, with the experience of Kilgrave, where that descended into alcoholism.
It's interesting because obviously the point you made a moment ago, like she specifically calls out the fact that daytime drinking is part of, should she put it down as experience or not? So clearly this isn't the first time she's walked out of a job at a time that is 5 p.m. somewhere in the world, as she describes it. So it could be any time of the day.
No, exactly. Like, I loved that. But another thing I loved, you see her kind of investigative nous here. Like, you know, she really does go to town on her boss in that office, where she says, well, you know, you get this flight to, I think it was Atlanta, where you meet such and such a person. And then, like, she's not on the payroll. And she goes, oh, actually, this is called embezzlement, so that he's actually taking money off the company, you know, or begins with that F word. Was it felony?
Yeah.
And it's like really, really, you know, good, because you see this sort of, this little nugget of her investigative, like, brilliance in tracking down people, making those connections and all that, hard graft to uncover, the real explanation for things, which ultimately means that she goes into the PI world and employment, you know?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Really good.
She seems to like investigating other people. The other point I wanted to pull out of the flashbacks that you didn't mention, which I thought was quite interesting, is actually a little bit of a flashback of Patsy. So just to confirm that Chris was right, Patsy was a star of a children's program when she was very young. It seems like when she was around 9 or 10. She seems to be living off the money from it. I think that's called out as well, that she was the highest paid child actor in America. She's got adoring fans who are constantly coming up to her, obviously because of the radio show now as well, but that's how she got into the radio show. But it's all called out from this absolutely atrocious come on from the guy at the bar. That is a horrible scene, just the kind of stuff she says to her, particularly because she would have been a child star, like a person who's, you know, 9 or 10 years old at the time. And this is what the guy's doing, watching her on TV. A little insight, I suppose, into how some men treat women in bars, really, which I don't have a huge amount of experience of how they're treated themselves, or how they feel they're treated in bars. I think it was an interesting call out from the writer of the show to put in, you know, a guy chatting up a girl and what he actually thinks is appropriate to say to a woman in a bar. Yeah, I don't think he was going to be going home on the date, regardless of whether Jessica was there or not, really.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So, John, what's your second point?
My second point is Kilgrave's caution in here. I actually, I really like it as a character trait that he is being completely, like, rigorous and thorough. Like, he has these superpowers, you know, he calls it out, where he meets Jessica for the first time in the flashback, which will be another one of my points. But, you know, he calls it out as, like, you know, that he's special. He knows he is. He knows he's strong. You see at the end where, he says, oh, I feel exhausted and I don't normally feel like that because of what's happened to me, because of his powers. This is a really, really tough and strong, superpowered guy from a psychological point of view, from a mind or mental control point of view. And I love the fact that despite that, he is looking at every angle. And I think for me, this is one of the things about Kilgrave, is that he's not just a superhero who can and does rely on his superhero powers, the writers have written the show to a point where they're not just explaining everything because of his superpowers. He, you know, is purposefully then mind controlling other people to tell Malcolm where to go, which is different every time they meet. At the chessboard, at a cafe, at a kiosk, different points all the time, different people, which makes it really difficult for Jessica to track. You know, he's mindful of that. And then we have the hired contract protection. That's his backup. If for some reason he's knocked out, run over and is, you know, put under to go to hospital or whatever, these are his backup guys. This guy is not only scary because of his power, but he's scary about how thorough he is in doing his job of being quite frankly, a creepy, disturbing, powerful superhero using it for evil. This to me was really good. I loved seeing that because, as I say, so many times, I may be generalizing way too much here, but and certainly in films where, they've got a shorter amount of time, it can just be kind of like glanced over with, well, that's his superhero power or whatever. Here, they're saying this guy is powerful. He can control people and he can control multiple people all at the same time.
Yeah.
Despite that, he's also a smart guy.
Yeah.
And cautious and thorough. That is even scarier when you put all that stuff together. And I loved, it sounds mundane, but it just makes him terrifying even more so. Absolutely. Loved it, really liked it.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. But, I know you do say that, but remember, we do have a ton now of TV shows of this ilk to compare. Jessica Jones and Daredevil 2, where they have developed great villain characters. And realistically, you can only compare Kilgrave to Kingpin now, from Daredevil. If you try and compare this character to, I don't know, Ra's al Ghul from Arrow, there's no comparison. Kilgrave is a better villain. If you try and compare him to some of the villains in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's a better villain. He's a better drawn villain. He's got some complexity to him and an intelligence to him that you see instantly. But, and slightly onto my point, which is also about Kilgrave, because linking in a little bit, it's the cruelty of the man as well that comes across just in one point, because I know it's in another scene a bit later on, which I know you'll talk about, but the scene at the kiosk when the guy at the kiosk, who he isn't mind controlling apparently, questions him for taking all of the magazines off the shelves, and Kilgrave turns to him and says, "That coffee in your face," essentially, and he throws what looks like obviously dark black hot coffee in his own face at Kilgrave's command. That's just cruel. He could have just said to him the Jedi mind trick, essentially, of don't look at me, I'm taking these magazines, and that's okay with you, that's fine. He told him to throw hot coffee in his face. That's cruelty. That's I'm willing to abuse my power for anything. Doesn't matter who you are. Don't question me, kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. And then he says to Malcolm as well, "Come on, junkie." Like, he's really dismissive, derogatory to these people that he mind controls.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I really want to pick out from Kilgrave here is that when he has the phone conversation with Jessica Jones, it is not like that at all. And actually, it's almost as though he's not using his superpower. And I actually thought he isn't. The conversation sounds so familiar that he has with her. To me, it sounded like a regular conversation. And that was the other scary thing, was that actually, even without his superpower, he's quite a persuasive guy.
Yep.
And just the way David Tennant has portrayed him, that conversation where he's saying, I didn't send Malcolm down a path that he wasn't going to go down already. He's justifying that. He kind of brokers the deal with her as well, that if you send me pictures, I will save Malcolm. I won't go after him, essentially. That to me is simply as well just persuasive conversation and vocabulary. I don't think he's mind controlling.
Absolutely.
And I love that. In any case, he is a master conversationalist and is able to draw on words and to put people in situations just because of how he talks. And his superpower is almost like an extension of that.
Yeah.
And that to me is a fabulous, dark character that you can actually, and what makes it even darker is that you can relate to it because people who are silver tongued. You can, twist things around or whatever. So this is really, really good stuff, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that point, I did write down a very specific element about his powers because it's always nice to know the limitations of them. While he's calling Jessica up on the phone and talking to her and trying to talk her into this and convincing her that he hasn't done anything too bad to Malcolm, he specifically says, "If you don't tell me what I want to know, I could come round to your house and make you tell me. but I'd rather you tell me over the phone. So essentially what he's saying is my power doesn't work over the phone. It's not just in my voice, it's in my presence as well, which I thought was quite interesting, that it shows the limitation of this mind control power. You can't just call up and say to a bank, open your doors and I'll walk in and take the money out. He has to be face to face and in a specific situation to be able to use his powers on the person he's trying to control, which I thought was interesting. In the Marvel universe, trying to understand the powers of a bad guy is always really important. But I like that little call out there. John, do you want to give us your next point?
Yeah, again, it's Simpson. It's Officer Will Simpson and his involvement in Jessica's big plan that she comes together. Like, he's really, really helpful. And having said that, I'm still there going, is he good or is he bad? I actually really just don't know. It's like there is this great paranoia that you get as an audience with this show, because you like Jessica are looking round to go, well, are they controlled by Kilgrave? Are they still controlled by Kilgrave? Do we know or don't we know that this person is controlled by Kilgrave? And that was in my mind all the time with Simpson involved in this plan.
Right.
And actually what even sparked my mind was that, it was when he's interrogating the contract security guy who's there protecting Kilgrave, and he says, "We don't know anything. This is our job." And I love that kind of that switch on a theme. No, we're not controlled by Kilgrave. This is our job.
Oh, that was fabulous.
It's a really good take. It really takes you out of that paranoia. But at the same time, then I was thinking, okay, Will Simpson is ex-military. Is he ex-military that, and I know he's a cop, and so this is why I'm thinking he's not, but is he ex-military and he set up his own security firm? I'm sure there'd be a conflict of interest there, being a police officer as well.
Oh, right, Simpson.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm like, they're going, does he know Kilgrave because he owns a security firm as an ex-military? Like a protection? Like, because they do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Become bodyguards. And so I'm like, is that what's happened? Like, I started thinking all this kind of stuff over Will Simpson. And it wasn't just because that Simpson and Jessica don't seem to really get on too much. But,
no.
But it's just like, I was still there thinking, I'm not entirely sure I still 100% trust you. I think you could be trying to get into Trisha's bed. And that scene I absolutely thought was fantastic. The scene where he's under the bed sheets in Trisha's bed, but you start off with Trisha's face, and I was looking at it going, oh, she's having a nightmare. And it's I thought it was, I'm having a nightmare that she was sort of dreaming or thinking about Kilgrave and being attacked because she's so paranoid about her safety and her security. And then, of course, it pans back and she starts making the noises. And then there's Will under the bed sheets.
Good man, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I, in the moment, took that scene. I thought it was really cool. But I can understand that people would take it in a different way. But I thought it was really, really good. But, he could still be sort of playing up to Trish to get her confidence. As I say, I still think he's the man with the fire behind him and so on, and I'm like, is that for good or for worse, or what? Why is that happening? So there's still a doubt for me over Will Simpson,
right? And
that's my point.
Interesting. I have a little bit of a piece about Will Simpson, just to answer one of your questions before the listeners do, though. So Will is definitely a cop. That is his job. He's a guy on the street. It's called out by Jessica because he's going a bit mental, as where he's trying to use his former Spec Ops abilities essentially in this planning. He's definitely a cop now. Jessica says to him, "You're a cop. Your job is to protect and serve. You're no longer in the army in the war."
Yeah, so I love that. She goes, "Remember, protect and serve. You're a cop. You're a good guy." Yeah,
exactly. So what really stood out to me there is that because he has the Spec Ops training, is this a kind of a prototype Punisher? Is this a prototype Frank Castle that we will see in Daredevil in season 2? Is Will Simpson of that ilk? Would he have worked with Frank Castle in the past? would he be that kind of person that absolutely believes he can use his spec ops abilities or his special operations abilities in New York City on someone that's trying to take him down? He seems to be going that way. It's only with the will of Trish and of Jessica to pull him back from essentially creating a campaign on the streets of New York to take down Kilgrave. He wants to put a bullet in Kilgrave's head, essentially. He doesn't even think about the consequences of what that will mean for Hope, which is the only reason Jessica's actually chasing down Kilgrave, if you remember. He doesn't realize what the consequences will be for Malcolm, or the consequences will be for himself if he pulls out a gun and is seen by Kilgrave. He doesn't look at those elements. He looks at it from a military perspective and goes, this is the operation task at hand, and the best option is to take out this guy.
Absolutely. But then when essentially Jessica is going abort, when the balloon goes off, he doesn't. And so that goes to me, is that why he left the army, or maybe was discharged from the army? Or is that because he's involved with Kilgrave still for another reason, i.e. that this is all a plan? Now, I know Kilgrave had the tracker on him, so that the protection outfit knew where to go. But nonetheless, I'm there thinking, why did he disobey that order ultimately? Is it just because he's a bad soldier who disobeys orders? Is it because he thinks he knows best?
Yes.
Or is it that he's working with Kilgrave? And that's the thing for me. I still have this slight bit of doubt over Will and a bit of paranoia. I hope to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about this show, because I actually am really focusing in on this guy going, are you legit or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good.
I definitely took it that he doesn't really respect the people that are giving him the orders. It's kind of, Trish, you're the talk show host, so you're going to be driving the car. Okay, I'll get you an automatic, essentially, because you can't possibly drive a manual or a stick shift away. You're clearly not that good a driver. And then it's Jessica, you're a slight little girl. How can you control this military operation? My experience is best, essentially. I do think also in that scene, I feel, maybe I need to look back at Captain America Winter Soldier, but is he wearing the undercover costume that Steve Rogers wears? Essentially the cap and the leather jacket as he's walking up to Kilgrave. It was very reminiscent anyway of Steve Rogers when he goes into hiding with Black Widow. Thought that was quite interesting, but nice little touch. And one of the other little touches that I've got in my notes is to see the kid in the park running through wearing the Captain America outfit as well. Yeah. Nice that they can use those costumes in here to tie it in with the MCU. Yeah. Thought that was pretty
really good. There'll be Wookiees walking through now.
I'm sure.
And Mickey Mouse. I mean, they're all connected. Mm-hmm. Derek, what's your next point?
Well, speaking of characters I don't trust, or you don't trust, my next point is actually about a new one that's been added to my list of who I don't trust. Ruben of the Crazy Neighbors Upstairs. We've seen him in pretty much every episode so far and haven't seen his sister since Jessica attacked her in the corridor. Yeah, if you remember.
Yeah.
Right, so there's a scene in this that has really put it in my head that there's something wrong with Ruben. Is he a backup spy for Kilgrave in this show? Jessica throws a bottle of whiskey at the bin, smashes on the floor. Within a couple of seconds, Ruben is at the door carrying banana bread. Yeah? How did he get from his apartment upstairs, grab the banana bread, get downstairs in the lift, get all the way to her office, knock on the door within what looked like about 3 seconds? Because all she does is go over and pick up a couple of pieces of glass. Is that editing? Or is it possibly that he's been outside the door spying, looking for an excuse to speak to Jessica?
Maybe so, and that could be. I hope not, because I'm really beginning to like Ruben. Like, the whole banana bread incident was great. I loved it. I loved how he kind of tilts to one side with the frosted glass of Alias Investigations behind him to try and take a look. And, like, I think Jessica is slightly warming to him. I hope it's a positive relationship and outcome for them, that they work together. I don't think for one moment that she's attracted to him, but I think she's kind of beginning to, like, look beyond the cover of the book, and rather than saying, oh, he's a nerd who lives with his sister, who has foil on the windows, who's, breeding bugs. He comes down with the banana bread. But I think more importantly, like, he seems quite genuine in relation to Malcolm in the lift. And maybe he's also looking out for Malcolm for Kilgrave because Malcolm's Kilgrave's spy. So maybe that's the reason. Or maybe it's the reason that he genuinely cares. And at the moment, for me, Ruben is one of the people that seems genuine.
Right.
And I thought that was really, really nice. And I think, he asks her out to the cinema. So for me, that was pretty interesting. And something that you said about him being a twist on a character in terms of being an assistant to Jessica, I kind of hope that happens because he seems genuine enough, but he might be doing something dreadful in the background because he's under the control of Kilgrave. Now, for me, the way I'm feeling about Ruben, if that were to happen, that would just be that would blow my mind and be awesome because they've completely blindsided me. That would be great because that's what I love about shows is where you go down and you get sucked in to that particular narrative and then it's blown inside out, basically. Yeah. So that's interesting you say that. Yeah. So because I have the opposite opinion of Ruben at the moment, but it would be absolutely fantastic to see how that pans out.
Yeah. Well, I was listening back to our podcast on episode 1 and hearing my own comments about Malcolm going, he's the funny neighbor next door who's, a drug addict and falls into their houses and takes peanut butter. Yep, that was a total sideswipe to me in last episode where it turns out that was all a plan and that's everything that's going on. So I'm now looking around at everybody. There is also a question, if I can bring it in here, a little bit of feedback that has come in, which I never even thought of, that apparently some of our listeners believe there is a relationship and not just a fraternal relationship between Ruben and his sister.
That could well happen.
Oh dear. I'd never thought of that.
No, I kind of did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks very much to the listeners for pointing that out. That will never be out of my head. I know that he had his pants off when Jessica went up to the apartment. But I didn't suspect that there may have been something else going on there. Yeah, okay. On that note, I think we should move on to the next point. John.
Well, it's a flashback, but it involves Malcolm. And it kind of involves Malcolm's backstory. I mean, I love it when he goes, and you can save me again.
Oh, wow.
And it goes to that, where he's about to be essentially chained to the toilet to detox and to get over his heroin addiction, and Jessica is laying it out straight that he's got a choice. And you see that she saved him again, that this relationship between Kilgrave and Jessica and Malcolm are all intertwined in this one moment, in this flashback.
Absolutely.
Where someone is being beaten up and mugged on the street. Jessica comes down as a superhero to save him. And Kilgrave is there, happens to be walking by with two ladies that he's picked up. And just how he says, I'm bored of you now, leave. And they go. And that's how Kilgrave and Jessica Jones meet. And that's what starts this long road for Jessica in terms of her psychological sort of enslavement by him. But it's the person that she saved from that mugging is Malcolm. And that to me was absolutely poignant, really poignant for this episode. And there were a few moments with Malcolm that were really, really poignant. I think, having the photograph there of him where he's clean cut and smiley and, they go, that was only 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was a social worker, his aim was to help other people. The really sad, tender moments about the tragedy of what's befallen Malcolm. And yet, despite that, you do have this notion, both said by Kilgrave and Malcolm, that he could have potentially been or become a heroin addict.
Right.
I mean, he does say, I only met him once a day. His powers only last for so long. He can feel that in himself. I wanted them, he says. I wanted them, Kilgrave says, I only did and set him along a path that he could have gone along himself, i.e., not that he was an addict, but maybe he was a user. That kind of thing, a bit like Jessica Jones with her alcohol. I'd love to see if anything more is explored as to whether Malcolm was maybe, teetering on the edge of addiction of heroin or something like that, and Kilgrave just essentially exploited that, or whether it was Kilgrave that set him to be an addict. Like the two slightly different things. And it's a bit like with Jessica, where we see her in the flashback, obviously enjoying a drink, shots all around, is day drinking, is it experience or special skills? And she teeters over the edge into heavy drinking, / alcoholism.
Yeah.
So, this to me is really a great backstory of Malcolm. I absolutely loved it, and I loved how it was intertwined with Jessica Jones and with her meeting Kilgrave. And it was a real poignant moment in this episode for me for that character, and I thought it was done really, really well. And especially when you see that he doesn't take the heroin.
Yeah, at the end, I know absolutely what you meant. I spoke about it in one of my points earlier on about the cruelty. This is the other element of that point, the cruelty of Kilgrave, to see this person that Jessica saved lying on the ground, beaten, broken, but saved by Jessica. He asks the question to Jessica, did you enjoy beating up those guys? And doesn't get the answer he's expecting. The answer he gets is yes, because I helped someone. I changed. I made a difference, essentially. So my reading of what's happened of this, and correct me or if you have a different opinion, John, we can discuss it, but it feels like because that's the piece that he's gotten back from her, she's saying, essentially, I'm a hero. I helped someone. I made a difference in the city. So because of that, Kilgrave takes Malcolm, turns him into an addict, turns him into a heroin addict. The point that's made is the photograph that was taken was 6 months ago. He only moved into the apartment 4 months ago. So there's been 2 months that Kilgrave potentially conditioned this guy. Where else would he find him if he didn't take him from the street that night and turn him into a user? So for 2 months, he was conditioned by Kilgrave into becoming a heroin addict and then set loose in the apartment with Jessica to take photographs of her every day. And as an addict at that stage, as a full-blown addict, he didn't need to have Kilgrave convincing him every day that he's doing the right thing. The power of Kilgrave, as we learned in one of the previous episodes, is that he makes you want what he tells you you want. Actually want it. Not that he tells you what to do. He tells you you want something and you want it. So that whole element of Malcolm, he's the absolute definition of the unreliable narrator. He's telling you, well, I am a junkie because I'm a junkie. Not because he told me to be a junkie, because I believe I wanted the heroin. And that is the power of Kilgrave. He's told him he wants the heroin, essentially. So the convincing that Jessica does and runs through with him to get off the heroin is the only thing that gets him off it at the end. And that's a fantastic scene and absolutely beautiful. But it is the cruelty of Kilgrave to take her one moment, and that potentially is the first time she's ever saved somebody, to take her one moment of triumph and turn it into this destruction of this character that helped other people. It's a really tough scene and a really tough backstory for this character.
It is absolutely tough. And I mean, how he gets there, irrespective, it doesn't matter because it still is poignant and tragic. But I agree with you and I agree with myself. I mean, either way, I think it's how he's gotten to where he is. And I do think that a lot of the other people who have been questioned by Jessica about being under Kilgrave's control can still make the difference as she can. They knew that they were being controlled, whether it was from Will, whether it was Jessica, whether it was the lady in the park that she collars after telling Malcolm where to go. She went, yeah, I'm supposed to be going somewhere else. Yeah, some British guy told me to come here and say this to this guy, but I didn't want to. It's the idea that they know that they want to do something else, but are compelled to do something. That was not in the conversation that Malcolm had with Jessica. It was that I wanted this. I know that these effects wear off. He wasn't saying, I knew I wasn't an addict, but I was just being compelled to take the heroin. So it was a slightly different conversation that was had by Malcolm. And maybe it's because he's on heroin. Possibly it's that reason.
That's the way I took it. And the point that I think Jessica makes herself is, if you don't give up the heroin, then I lose no matter what I do. And essentially the loss there is that Kilgrave's won. Kilgrave is telling me he can convince anybody to do anything around me and they can't get out of the situation.
But until that moment, Jessica didn't know that Malcolm was the person that she saved. Because he's hidden. He's hidden from her. It's only when her and Kilgrave walked away that he then turns and we get to see that it's Malcolm. So I don't know whether Jessica knew that it was Malcolm that she had saved. Kilgrave may have known that, and maybe it was a trap by Kilgrave. I think, for me, is that the first time she's been told, this, you can save me again? And then presumably he goes back. In which case, it's only then in that moment that she knows that it's an attack on her because...
Yes.
Yeah. And that's all it is.
Absolutely agree. It's when she takes him home to the apartment and he tells her, you get to save me again. He's known all this time that Jessica was the one that saved him. He knows it's an attack on Jessica to turn him into a heroin addict and to have him be the one that follows her around.
But everything's an attack on Jessica. The fact that she was so close to getting Hope sorted and then she kills her parents.
Yeah.
That, all these elements are all an attack on Jessica.
Absolutely.
And that's, again, kind of slightly feeds into my paranoia over Will Simpson.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. John, what's your next point?
My final point is Hope. She's asking Jessica for money in prison. And again, there's a mystery there. Is this just a prison showdown and beat up and bullying kind of thing going on? Or is this, again, Kilgrave's influence?
Yeah.
For me, this is definitely sort of really intriguing. You see sort of towards the end, when Kilgrave's woken up and all of a sudden it's intermingled with the Hope getting sort of punched in the stomach repeatedly on her bunk bed in the prison by one of the other prisoners. And you kind of, for me, I was slightly unclear with all of this, why this was happening, because we hadn't seen any lead up. So I'm sure there will be further explanation of this down the line.
Definitely.
But I was really intrigued by what was going on. And then ultimately, like with a lot of stuff now in this show, why it was happening. Was it a Kilgrave thing? Was it just a regular prison sort of violence and bullying thing?
Yeah, was it just a crossover with Orange is the New Black?
Exactly. Yeah. So this was an intriguing kind of development in Hope's story as well. So that I thought was a good addition to this episode.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Derek, what's your final point?
No, I think we've actually used up all of the points I had, but I do want to definitely call out the name of the episode and its scene, that the scene it comes from. The sandwich saved me. I think this is fantastic. Essentially, this is Jessica getting to the bottom of the rung of all the menial jobs and tasks that she's taken. So she's standing in the street calling out, 2 for 1 hoagies, 2 for 1 hoagies, 2 for 1 hoagies, 2 for 1 hoagies, over and over again. And the scene is essentially a young girl being walked across the road by her father, who's paying no attention because he's looking at his mobile. And his daughter basically would have been run over by a taxi if it hadn't been for Jessica stepping out and stopping the cab. I really liked this scene because essentially one of the first displays of a superpower from Jessica Jones, chronologically, I suppose, here is her stopping a car dressed as a big sandwich. I think it's hilarious. I love the reaction of the little girl who's like, it's the moment that you would see in a superhero film where it's like, thank you, Spider-Man, or thank you, Superman. In this, it's the sandwich saved me, which I just thought was really good. And a lot of humor in this episode, I think, overall. I think that one really stood out to me. John, do you have any other notes about the episode?
I do. There's a few. One, I love Trish saying, 1 tase and I'm useless. I just thought, considering like Jessica gets multiple tase cattle prods to her And Will is obviously using his special force training after they lose Kilgrave once they've kidnapped him.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that line from Trish. One tase and I'm useless. Like,
Yeah.
she seems so downbeat that she's like failed everyone. It was just really like, it was such a great line of dialogue.
Absolutely. And it seems like Trish has been trying to convince Jessica to put on the superhero costume for months to get her to be a superhero. Jessica even calls out at one point, why don't you put on a cape and save the city? And clearly Trish has been training for that. She's been training to do something to protect herself, thinks she'll be great at it, and then gets tased once and collapses inside the car. So yeah, poor Trish. Poor Trish.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the whole CDC facility and the hermetically sealed room where they were going to have Kilgrave put if the plan had worked.
Yes,
and I loved the conversation that they had, Will and Jessica, between the glass, where Jessica goes, you G.I. Joes, you definitely have a screw loose. You probably wiped out a village, and then it turns back to him and he goes, you think just because you have these powers, you're a hero? I've seen, true heroes.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting conversation between these two, between the soundproofing. I thought that was a really cool little bit.
It's a really nice idea. And I haven't actually I don't think I've seen that before in anything else, where there's a soundproof room where neither person can hear the other and they're both saying really abusive things that they'd never say to each other's face. I thought the gag was going to be that potentially, and I know from the comics she doesn't, but potentially Jessica had a super hearing ability and could hear everything that Will was saying, and it made her hate him even more. I thought that was going to be the gag about the scene, but there's no gag. The gag itself overall is that neither of them can hear each other and both are willing to be very abusive to each other. Good catch. I forgot that was definitely going to be in my points.
Yeah, it was really good. I think then after that, just like the ending, obviously, I mean, we've kind of not really discussed it too much. I mean, but, the fact that Jessica, like we touched on it briefly, but the fact that Jessica ultimately sends Kilgrave a picture, this is a real significant development. She has gone back in, seen that Malcolm didn't take the drugs, and actually goes, I want Kilgrave to forget about Malcolm, so I will send the pictures to him myself. Again, is it Kilgrave exploiting the weakness that Jessica already talked about, saying he knows my weakness, that I give a shit about people?
Yeah.
Or is it that she knows that and knows that he will do that and is working on something to counter that ultimately in the long term? So that was really, really a great development. I love that kind of that power that Kilgrave seemingly has over her, but at the same time, Jessica is doing this to protect Malcolm, and maybe she's also got another underlying plan in this somewhere, possibly.
I hope so, but I also loved about the scene with Kilgrave on the phone. We talked about his side of the conversation, but I love the fact that she doesn't say one word to him on the phone.
Yeah.
I think that's just a beautiful touch. She doesn't even say hello on the phone. She doesn't say goodbye, how are you, anything like that, obviously, because she doesn't like him. But she doesn't give him the satisfaction of hearing her voice even once on that phone call. And I think that's a really nice touch for the character of Jessica.
Yeah, and then my final note really is I love Jessica's call out to Malcolm, where she's essentially saying, you have this choice now. You can stop being a heroin addict and junkie. Okay, it'll take time, but stop being a self-pitying piece of shit, she goes, and save me for once. And I think that's a really important line. Her weakness is saving people, as just kind of mentioned, but it's also that I want someone to come in and save me. I want someone to help me, to do stuff for me. It can't always be me doing it in the other way, helping other people. That's my weakness and I'll always do it. But for once, I want someone to save me. And by you not going down and continuing the heroin addiction, you can also save me by doing that and coming out the other side. That is a great bit of character exploration of Jessica Jones, which I really liked as well.
Absolutely. Like this is a case of where a superhero is pretty much useless. She can't punch the heroin out of him. She can punch him until he can no longer take heroin. Break his hands, maybe, I guess, is about all she could do. But I love that she basically gives him the choice. She goes, I'm done here. I can't really do any more here. If you want to save me and save yourself, you have the choice here and you can do it. And she believes she's strong enough to do it as well. And it turns out it's founded. So yeah, really, really good. Definitely.
So Derek, with that, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
Do you know what? I'm going to say this is my favorite episode so far. I absolutely think the elements of the characters that we get in this episode probably wouldn't play as well if I hadn't seen the other 4 episodes, obviously. But having the flashback now to seeing Jessica in happier times, kind of, to know that everything in her life or all the pain that she's going through in her life isn't necessarily just caused by Kilgrave. It's not just one moment in her life that changed everything, but knowing that things got worse for her after Kilgrave, or she believes they did anyway. I think that's a great touch to the character. Having the references to the comic books, like having the costume, the name Jewel being spoken out loud by Trish. I think that's a great touch. It's a nice little call out there. Nice little gag that there is no possible way she would ever put on that costume. That's really, really good. Seeing stuff like obviously Simpson, seeing a bit of his character, seeing the potential that he could turn into the Punisher, or someone like the Punisher, I suppose. I thought that was fantastic. Kilgrave at his absolute cruelest in this episode is fantastic for me. I thought it was well worth sticking with this character just to get how insane and how little how little feeling he has towards anybody else around him is fascinating in this episode. Really, really good. The highest of defends for this episode so far. I feel this is probably everything the first 4 episodes we're doing was building up to an episode this good for me. John, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
I do. I do defend this episode of Jessica Jones, and very much in the same way as you do. This, to me, was as well my favourite episode so far, actually. I'm definitely giving this 4.5 hoagies out of 5.
Or 9 out of 10, because you get 2 for 1.
Absolutely, absolutely. I loved, for me, in this episode, this is how you do flashbacks. The flashbacks here gave an emotional weight to what was going on in the present and in the current, in terms of the fun side of Jessica Jones and the contrast of that. And obviously, what had happened in terms of the meeting of Jessica and Malcolm, Jessica and Kilgrave in that one sort of crucible moment, and how that's panned out afterwards. It added tenderness, it added tragedy, and it added poignancy to what was being presented to us on the screen. And for me, I absolutely loved that. And it still kept the humor.
Yeah.
I mean, irrespective of all the other great things. I mean, I loved the kidnap of Kilgrave. It was really well done. I loved the trailing of Malcolm by Jessica, and all this within the context of these flashbacks, for me, was absolutely really good. Again, Kilgrave, absolutely huge in this episode, really seeing just quite how an evil mastermind he is. Okay, they worked through that and managed to attack his weak point. But again, for me, all of this is about how the past has informed the present with these characters.
Absolutely.
And it really, really worked. And I think from the end of that, I still think the phone conversation between Kilgrave and Jessica Jones was, quite frankly, really spooky, just as how normal Kilgrave seemed to speak to Jessica, even though she didn't say a word, as a regular conversation, given how he speaks to other people, like Malcolm, like the guy at the kiosk. Absolutely. Yeah. There is an element of respect and admiration there that he holds for her still. And that was interesting as well. So for me, absolutely highest defend as well.
Mm-hmm. Is he just thinking of Jessica? I know we're way outside the actual discussion of the episode, but is he just thinking of Jessica as his partner? Does he think she actually wanted to be there? Has he convinced himself that despite the fact that she was under mind control, that she actually did have feelings for him? Is that what we think is happening with Kilgrave? That he actually feels that he doesn't need mind control with Jessica, that she is his equal, that the months and months they spent together were actually correct in her mind, despite how Jessica has reacted to him.
I don't know, but unfortunately what I've just gotten in my head is that his greatest flaw in his ability is if he speaks to himself, can he convince himself to do something?
Of anything, yes.
So maybe it's that element of it, you know? If you talk in your sleep, maybe you wake up and you do something weird.
Possibly.
Like cat food porridge or something like that. I don't know. But
that's a very doctor thing to do, is to have some cat food porridge. Yeah.
But I think with that, that comes to the end of our discussion. We have some feedback from some of our listeners. And it's really just to say here up front that, remember, if you have any feedback on the episodes of Jessica Jones, please send it into feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. And of course, you can also send in your feedback, discussions and comments on Facebook at Defenders TV Podcast. Like our page, join our group, and of course, tweet at us at DefendersCast for all feedback, comments, discussions on this great show so far.
Absolutely. And can I just ask, when you're sending in your email, can you make sure you mark it with the episode number that you're talking about? We are not watching ahead. We've watched 5 episodes. The next episode we watch is episode 6, and we'll podcast directly afterwards. A little bit of a misunderstanding where we have received a little bit of feedback for a future episode. I'm the only one that's read it. I think I'm okay. I think it hasn't spoiled too much for me. But if you could just mark it with the episode you're talking about so that I hold it over for a future feedback section.
Yeah, we just need the Kilgrave Jedi mind wipe.
Absolutely. So our first piece of feedback comes from Sylvie C. Sylvie was our winner of our competition that we had in the first episode, and Sylvie comes back saying, wow, I'm so happy, and you have no idea, the posters of all my favourite shows, that's too good to be true. She gives us some feedback for episode 5 as well. She says, I loved episode 5. Obviously, the star of this one is Malcolm. So sad to see how miserable he became with the drugs. To know that Kilgrave barely had to mind control him, just had to get him hooked on the drug. I thought it was a little exaggerated, though, that Malcolm is also linked to the night Kilgrave met Jessica. I mean, she could have saved any other man that night, but it had to be her future junkie neighbour. So to that point, I think we spoke about that during the episode. I feel that was absolutely on purpose. Kilgrave picked Malcolm up off the street and turned him into a junkie to turn her one triumph against Jessica. That's my feeling on it.
But is that the only person she saved as a superhero? Do we know that?
It definitely was the person that she saved the night she met Kilgrave, so that's the one he knows about, definitely.
Yeah.
But
it's not the only one, potentially. She saved the girl as well. Like, what I mean is that it's not just a single save, but yeah, she may know that she met him on that day.
Yeah, possibly. Maybe that's the fundamental pieces that she knows that Kilgrave met him as well. Yeah, maybe that's it. Sylvie goes on to say, Trish is a great character, definitely doesn't seem to have any hidden superpowers other than her courage. That's what I like about her. A lot of women, including myself, can relate to her. She's strong-headed, she's training, she wants to make a difference, but in the end, no superpower also means that we would probably all end up knocked out in a matter of seconds. Haha, that's just the reality. Keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. That's I definitely agree with you there in relation to the episode about Malcolm. I mean, it is so sad, and that idea that, you know, he is teetering on the edge of drug addiction or at least heavy drug use, and just how that mirrors with Jessica and her alcoholism, definitely. And yeah, I like the fact that Malcolm was saved by Jessica. I know what you're saying, definitely, about him being the neighbor junkie next door. But I can live with that. But I definitely know what you're saying. But I also would say I don't think it is the one and only. I think maybe Kilgrave knows that, but Malcolm and Jessica, Jessica doesn't until that night in her bathroom.
Yeah. All right. We'll keep discussing this, I'd say, well off air.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Sylvie, for all that. Definitely, we all would like to have the the superpowers, or at least the drive like Trish does to become something more than we can be, I suppose.
Absolutely. But yes, we would probably all end up knocked out in a matter of seconds.
I can't even do the 30-day shred, so I mean, look, we'll see how it goes.
Some other pieces of feedback, some on Luke Cage from our Facebook page. Doug Green says, I love my culture as Luke Cage. I can't wait for that show now.
Snap.
Joel Sharpton also says, I'm with Doug. I like lots of things about the show, but 2 episodes in, Luke Cage is my favourite thing. I also like that every show adds several great side players to the universe that can all further inhabit future shows or movies. Hogarth and Luke in particular in this one. But why not have Foggy help out some of these heroes in future in one way or another, or have Kingpin menace them all, or have them all argue about the Punisher and what to do with him?
Snap, absolutely. Luke Cage for both Doug and for Joel. Loving Luke Cage. Can't wait to see the standalone show, definitely. And to be honest, I think, the crossovers, it'd be great to layer them in over the course then, like of Jessica Jones. We haven't seen any just yet. But obviously, we're hoping that from episodes 6 through to 13 that we might see a Foggy or a Matt Murdock or maybe even, a night nurse or Rosario Dawson's character. All of these, we might see something on them. If Kilgrave ends up going to prison, that, not that it becomes like an Arkham thing, but, you start to see Rikers Island possibly being inhabited with the Kingpin, Kilgrave, and would that ultimately lead to something that comes up in the Defenders? So it could be that we see much more interaction of this within the Defenders, but certainly I'm loving that crossover between Luke and Jessica in this, and obviously with Luke having his standalone as well. That's great.
Yeah. And Rebecca closes out the points on Luke Cage by saying Luke is simply perfect in this. We know you're a huge fan of Luke Cage, Rebecca, and I'm delighted that the casting and the acting has matched up to your image, because I know you love Luke and Iron Fist, and delighted about that.
Yeah, I agree, Rebecca.
Yeah.
We need to share that Luke Cage stories next. We also have a long-time listener, first-time caller here with Irene. Good to have you back, Irene, even if it is within the comments section.
Yes, our former co-host, one of our former Defenders, Irene.
She goes, hi, everybody. I have only seen 3 episodes so far. Very dark, but I really like it. David Tennant is horrifying. Is that his purple? Are you not a fan of purple? Or is it just that he is horrifying? Because I agree, he is horrifying.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Thanks, Irene, for that. It'd be great.
Absolutely.
It'd be great to have you on board talking about the darkness and the horrification of David Tennant in the show. But thanks so much for sending that email in to us. Chris has also got in contact while we've been recording to say that the reason he's not here this week is because he's been taken by Kilgrave. So,
oh my God.
Just so you know. So hopefully he'll be back next week. He might be brainwashed to take photographs of us.
We need to call Heroes for Hire, obviously. And finally, we have Ronaldo on Twitter. He goes, hi guys, keen on your thoughts. My mate didn't much like Daredevil. I thought it was brilliant. He prefers Gotham. Is it better or different? I think it's different. I think Gotham has divided opinion, and it's different. It is a different type of show. It is much more linked, I think, to... Now, after covering it in season 1 on Gotham TV podcast and done 5 episodes of season 2 of Gotham so far, we don't get it till January. We were lucky enough to see some of those episodes in the US when we were over for New York Comic Con. We saw those, but it is different, and I think it harks more back to 1966 Batman of Adam West, but with dark tinges. It's kind of slightly schizophrenic in that sense. It has these real goofy or goofball moments that do hark back to 1966, but then there is also a lot of violence and a lot of blood. And, I mean, we're only 5 episodes in this season, but it does feel much more... connected together this season compared to the first season, where originally they started off with 13 episodes, then it was up to 16, and then finally they got 22 episodes. So in many respects, the writers, in a sense, didn't really know whether they were coming or going. The first 13 episodes of Gotham do seem to be like much more consistent, and then like characters drop off that were there for the first 13 and there's no explanation why, which is slightly weird, really, I think, in a show. It's not something necessarily you would get too much of, I don't think, from what we've seen of Daredevil or of Jessica Jones so far, that you get in this. Everyone is there for a reason. And that is a really interesting thing. And I think that's what we get now in season 2 of Gotham. But I think it's a different type of show. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree with John. I enjoy covering Gotham over on Gotham TV podcast. It's really good fun. As a show, I can kind of let my brain turn off a little bit more and kind of go, oh, that's the character from the comics. Oh, that's another character from the comics. I can do that a lot. I was able to do that a lot in the start of season 1 when they were throwing in every single villain. There's a little bit more connection towards the end of season 1. I enjoyed the show so much more. But I do think Daredevil is a different class of show. Much like Jessica Jones, there's a much deeper set of characters. The rules of the universe are very different. The idea of characterization and having strong actors in the roles. Everybody in these shows is very strong on Daredevil and Jessica Jones. So I don't think there's anything to compare. If you have time in between binges of Netflix shows, Daredevil and Jessica Jones, there's nothing wrong with Gotham, and definitely enjoy it. You've got 2 seasons there. It's 44 episodes. It's quite a lot of stuff, and sometimes it does feel a bit more stretched than the tight writing that's in Daredevil and Jessica Jones. But
I do think that, for example, Corey Michael Smith's portrayal of Ed Nigma, who ultimately becomes the Riddler, is absolutely fantastic. Yep. And that is really a well-developed character, drawn out. But it retains a lot of... I think the comic book element to it, more so maybe than these do. And I think the same with Oswald Cobblepot as the Penguin. Quite long, drawn out character development, which is really solid. And they're parts of the show that, certainly for myself, I've really enjoyed. So, definitely. I mean, there's great character development in Gotham as well. I think the general themes are lighter in Gotham, but then it's punched under with, quite severe violence. So it's very much a jarring and contrasting kind of piece of TV, I think. And I mean that in a good way. So I definitely think it's just a different type of TV show. Yeah. And that appeals to people or it doesn't. For me, again, I really like Gotham.
Absolutely. I love it. I wouldn't want to be doing without it. You can definitely tell the difference between a network TV show that has 22 episodes and a show that's released in one day, like Jessica and Daredevil. You can definitely tell the difference, and that's kind of all I mean, I suppose. I can't wait to get Gotham back to us in the UK and Ireland back in January next year and get back to Gotham TV podcast to talk about the show without a doubt. And definitely really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's been really good to have you on board with us for this episode of Defenders TV podcast, looking at AKA The Sandwich Saved Me.
Still makes me laugh.
Remember, you can subscribe to Defenders TV podcast on iTunes. Just go to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes and you can subscribe there, or you can subscribe to any other good podcast catcher, Android podcast catcher. Just search Defenders TV podcast. Please continue sending in your feedback. It's been really good sharing other people's thoughts on this to our listeners. It's really good of you. So if you have any comments on any of the episodes on the podcast, just send them in to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or follow us on Twitter, or join our Facebook group or page. And again, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking about episode 5 of Jessica Jones. Our next episode will be out on Tuesday, the 8th of December, if my mathematics is correct. It'll be episode 6 of Jessica Jones, just about the halfway point of this really, really enjoyable, slightly creepy, slightly dark, but excellent Netflix show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, bye.
Great stuff, guys. This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.